The first time humans arrived at the Galactic hub, the Zithurians didn't know what to do with them. The humans came in a small, slightly battered ship, its design simple but oddly efficient, unlike the sleek, symmetrical ships of the Council species. The vessel wobbling through the docking chamber drew curious glances. Zithurians were creatures of order. Their skin reflected light in perfect patterns, their movements were measured, and even their conversations followed precise rhythms. Nothing about humans followed any known pattern. The doors of the human ship hissed open, and out stepped the crew. There were 4 of them, 2 men, a woman, and a young boy who looked like he hadn't slept for days. They carried bags, instruments, and even a small plant in a pot. The Zithurians' eyes widened collectively, scanning every detail. Every step the humans took seemed casual, almost careless. One of the humans tripped over a cable and laughed instead of apologizing, while another waved at the robotic assistants, making them beep in confusion. The council had expected polite bows, rigid stances, and careful greetings. What they got instead was curiosity, laughter, and chaos. A tall Zithurian approached. Its voice was musical, almost like singing, and it said, "State your purpose and adhere to the customs of this chamber." The humans looked at each other and then back at the Zithurian. The man with the plant smiled and said, "Customs. Oh, we'll try, but we tend to make our own." Representatives from dozens of species watched from glass platforms. All of them expected humans to stumble, to be confused, or to at least be polite in the right ways. Instead, the humans began exploring the hall. One pressed a button on a console, not knowing what it would do. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared, showing routes, planets, and species. The boy pointed and asked, "What's that? Can we go there?" A Zithurian tried to explain that the map was only for observation, not travel planning. The boy simply nodded and said, "We'll be careful," before pressing more buttons. Each press opened new lights and paths, drawing gasps and whispers from the audience. One of the Zithurian officials whispered to another, "They are reckless. Completely without discipline." The other shook its reflective head. "Or perhaps they follow a different kind of discipline, one we cannot measure." "These patterns aren't random," she said aloud, "but they're flexible. I like that." A Zithurian scientist leaned forward. Patterns were supposed to be fixed, predictable. Humans didn't seem to care about fixedness. Instead, they adapted to it, played with it, and sometimes ignored it entirely. The council decided to test the humans. A holographic simulation was projected in the center of the hall, showing a simple planet with a small village under threat from a natural disaster. Every species that came before the council had solved the problem in exact ways, using established rules. Humans, however, approached it differently. The man with the plant suggested, "What if we move the villagers to higher ground?" While the woman proposed creating a temporary shelter using materials from the simulation itself. The boy, full of energy, wanted to use the animals in the village to help carry supplies. The humans did not wait for permission or analysis. They tried everything, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, but always learning and adjusting instantly. By the time the simulation ended, the village was safe, and no Zithurian solution could match the efficiency of the humans' improvisation. The council members murmured among themselves. "They do not follow our rules, they ignore our structures." Yet they succeed. The humans were unaware of the stir they caused. They simply looked at the results and clapped. "Well," said the man, "that worked better than expected. Let's see what else is interesting here." Humans wandered between shelves, sometimes picking up devices, other times reading scrolls or scanning holograms. A Zithurian guide instructed them, "Observe quietly. Do not rearrange the exhibits." The humans nodded politely, but one of them picked up a small crystal device and pressed it lightly. A miniature light show exploded in the air, displaying patterns the guide had never imagined. Instead of reprimanding them, the guide found itself smiling. Humans, it seemed, could experiment without causing harm, and in doing so, they discovered beauty and meaning the Zithurians had never considered. At dinner, the humans were seated with representatives from other species. Zithurians had strict dining etiquette, specific utensils for each type of food, rules for seating order, and even a rhythm for conversation. Humans ignored these rules in small ways. They laughed loudly, passed dishes freely, and asked questions that had nothing to do with the meal. Other species looked scandalized. A small, insectoid creature hissed in disapproval. The humans, however, were attentive and polite in their own way. They listened, they learned, and they responded with genuine curiosity rather than obedience. By the end of the meal, many species were confused, some were annoyed. But a few, Especially the younger delegates were fascinated. The night ended with humans in a small observation deck looking at the stars. The boy pointed to a cluster of lights. "Are those planets?" he asked. A Zithurian beside him explained, but the boy kept asking questions, some silly, some profound. "Do we know all the life there? Could we make friends with them? Could we share ideas?" The Zithurian found the questions difficult. Humans did not accept limitations easily. They saw possibilities where others only saw constraints. Over the next few days, the humans explored every corner of the hub. They attended lessons in mathematics, art, interstellar navigation, and even diplomacy. They did not always follow instructions. Sometimes they asked why before doing anything, other times they made up new methods that confused teachers but ultimately worked better. A human once turned a dry lecture about star mapping into a lively discussion, sketching patterns in the air and using jokes to make everyone laugh. Even the strictest Zithurian instructors found themselves enjoying the lesson. Word about the humans spread quickly. Delegates whispered about them in corridors, comparing notes. "They cannot be categorized," one said. "They ignore rules yet solve problems that take us years," said another. "They are chaotic," a third commented. "But somehow they make sense," someone added almost reluctantly. The humans themselves noticed none of this. They were too busy learning, experimenting, and being curious. One evening, the woman took the plant she had brought and placed it near a window overlooking a nebula. "It needs light," she said simply. A Zithurian watching was moved. Humans cared deeply for living things, even in ways that defied logic. They nurtured, protected, and sometimes laughed at the unexpected results. Eventually, the council decided to hold a formal session to determine the humans' category. Representatives from every species gathered. The humans entered casually, greeting everyone warmly, shaking appendages and asking questions. The Zithurian council leader, tall and gleaming, began, "We have observed your species carefully. You break rules, disregard order, and yet you achieve remarkable outcomes. Tell us, why do you not follow the rules?" But sometimes rules are just starting points. We try new things, see what works, and improve what we can. We like to find out, and sometimes make better ones. The humans had impressed, baffled, and inspired every observer. Some species whispered about adopting human methods. Some laughed nervously, unsure if chaos or brilliance would dominate. One thing was certain: humans could not be fit into any existing category. They did not follow rules in the way other species did, yet their unpredictability often led to progress and innovation. As the humans left the council chamber, laughing and discussing what to explore next, a Zithurian scholar whispered to a colleague, "I do not know what category to give them. Perhaps they are beyond categories." The colleague nodded. "Or maybe they will teach us new ones." In a galaxy governed by order and procedure, humanity had arrived not to obey, but to explore, to question, and to grow, on their own terms. After the council session, the humans were given a special assignment, a series of tests to observe their behavior and abilities. The Zithurians wanted to see if humans could be categorized in any logical way, but they still weren't sure how to handle these unpredictable creatures. The humans were excited. To them, the tests were just new games to explore. The first test took place on a large artificial planet designed to mimic different environments. Some areas were deserts, others were forests, and a few were icy plains. The humans were dropped at one edge with only minimal instructions: reach the center and record any interesting discoveries along the way. Other species had tried this test before, following strict maps and rules, and most completed it by walking only in straight lines and collecting items in exact order. The humans, however, immediately began to improvise. The woman pulled out a small device and scanned the surroundings. "This desert seems dry, but look at those rocks. They could hold water underneath," she said. The man with the plant nodded. "Good idea. Let's see if we can find a source without following the usual path." The boy skipped ahead, fascinated by a small mechanical creature moving in the sand. He laughed and said, "Look. It's like it's dancing. Can we follow it?" The humans didn't worry about failing the test. They followed curiosity, asking questions and observing patterns that no other species had noticed. A Zithurian scientist observed from above. Its 3 eyes blinked rapidly. "They ignore the path, yet they find water faster than the mapped routes of other species," it said to a colleague. "Their methods are illogical yet effective. How can this be?" The boy laughed as he balanced carefully, and the woman steered with a long stick. Within minutes they were across the river, laughing at the simplicity of the solution. The Zithurians watching had to admit, Humans thought differently, yet they got results. In the icy plains, the humans faced the coldest challenge. The temperature was near freezing, and the artificial winds blew with force. Other species had strict survival rules, but humans improvised again. They gathered snow and ice, shaped it into small windbreaks, and used their coats creatively to stay warm. The boy tried sliding on the ice and fell multiple times, each time laughing and getting up quickly. "This is fun. Let's see if we can go faster," he shouted. The humans' approach to problem-solving was creative, adaptive, and even playful. The Zithurians noted down every behavior, unable to predict the humans' next move. After completing the environmental challenges, the humans were tested on teamwork. A large room was filled with puzzles that required coordination, logic, and timing. Other species often failed these tests because they insisted on strict plans and rigid roles. The humans, in contrast, argued sometimes, laughed sometimes, and frequently switched roles. They did not follow instructions exactly, yet they communicated constantly, shared ideas, and adjusted as needed. One puzzle involved moving a heavy holographic cube across a platform. At first, they tried lifting it together, failing. Then the woman suggested using levers and pulleys, even improvising tools from the nearby equipment. The man noticed an alignment problem with the sensors and corrected it. The boy noticed patterns in the cube's light signals and suggested the exact moments to push. Within minutes, the cube moved to the designated spot. The Zithurians watching were astonished. The humans had not followed the usual rules, but they had succeeded where others failed. Next came a test of logic. The humans were presented with a series of complex problems involving numbers, symbols, and galactic languages. Other species solved these problems in careful, orderly ways. Humans approached differently. They guessed, tried, failed, laughed, and tried again. Each failure gave them information. By experimenting rather than strictly reasoning, they often reached correct answers faster than those who followed rigid logic. The Zithurians were amazed. Humans seemed reckless, but their recklessness was guided by curiosity, creativity, and learning. The final test was diplomacy. Humans were paired with delegates from other species in a simulated negotiation scenario. They were asked to resolve a conflict over territory and resources. Most species relied on strict rules, hierarchical commands, and careful phrases. Humans, however, talked openly, listened carefully, and sometimes broke formal conventions to ask direct questions or propose imaginative solutions. One human joked, "Why not share it all and have fun instead?" The other species laughed or blinked in surprise. By the end, the conflict was resolved with a compromise that no Zithurian had predicted. Humans had not followed the rules of diplomacy, but they had found a solution that worked better than expected. Every Zithurian observing had to admit that humans were unlike any other species. They were unpredictable, often chaotic, and sometimes silly, but they were intelligent, creative, and highly adaptable. No existing category could describe them accurately. "They are neither obedient nor disobedient," one scholar whispered. "They are something else entirely." To them, the tests were challenges, puzzles, and adventures. They laughed when they succeeded, learned when they failed, and always moved forward. They did not see themselves as rule breakers. They simply did what seemed best in the moment, guided by curiosity and care. During a break, the humans explored the hub's recreational area. It was a vast space filled with games, virtual experiences, and strange alien devices. The humans tried everything. The boy jumped into a zero-gravity chamber, spinning and laughing. The man tried a puzzle that involved arranging floating geometric shapes in precise patterns, but then abandoned the instructions to make his own design. The woman observed and experimented with a holographic painting system, creating swirling patterns that shimmered in colors the Zithurians had never seen. Other species watched in amazement. Humans did not follow rules, yet they discovered beauty, efficiency, and fun in ways no one else had imagined. A young Zithurian approached the humans, curious. "Do you ever worry about rules?" it asked. The man smiled. "Sometimes, but we try to understand why rules exist first. If the rule helps, we follow it. If it doesn't, we improve it." The Zithurian tilted its head. "You improve rules?" The woman nodded. "Yes, we think rules are like tools. You use them when they help, change them when they don't, and sometimes invent new ones if needed." The Zithurian's three eyes blinked in amazement. That evening, humans sat together looking at a holographic projection of the galaxy. They laughed at the names of planets, speculated about alien life, and wondered aloud where they might go next. They did not care about impressing the Zithurians, following rules, or fitting in. They simply observed, questioned, and dreamed. Their energy, optimism, and curiosity were contagious. Even the most rigid Zethurians found themselves smiling at the humans' excitement. The next day, the humans faced their final evaluation. The council gathered to observe them solving a complex multi-step problem that combined environment, teamwork, logic, and diplomacy. Humans approached each step in their own way. They split tasks, tried unexpected methods, and encouraged each other constantly. Some steps failed, but they learned quickly. They laughed at mistakes, adapted to new information, and worked together in ways no one had expected. By the end of the problem, the result was more effective than any previous solution achieved by any other species. The council gasped. "How do they do it?" one member asked. "They do not follow our methods. They do not adhere to our standards." "Yet they succeed," another added. "They think differently, but the outcomes are remarkable. Perhaps they are beyond our categories." The Zethurians were left with a difficult problem. How could a species that ignored rules yet achieved extraordinary results be classified? The humans had demonstrated abilities that no one could predict. They were curious, creative, adaptable, and kind. They were unpredictable yet effective. They were playful yet thoughtful. They were humans, and that alone made them a puzzle for the galaxy. As the humans prepared to leave the testing area, the boy turned and said, "I wonder what we'll discover next." The woman smiled. "Something unexpected, I'm sure." The man with the plant nodded. "And maybe we'll improve a few rules along the way." For the first time, a species had appeared that could not be boxed, labeled, or predicted. They were rule breakers in some ways, creators in others, and explorers in all. The council knew one thing for certain. Humans would leave a mark on the galaxy that no system of order could contain. And as the humans disappeared into the starry expanse, laughing and asking questions, the Zethurians realized that perhaps rules were not always the highest form of intelligence. Sometimes, creativity, curiosity, and adaptability were even more powerful. Humans had arrived not to follow, but to inspire, not to obey, but to explore and not to be categorized, but to expand the very meaning of possibility. After the initial tests, the humans were given a new assignment. This time, they would visit a planet known for its strict rules and highly structured society. The planet, called Ordara, was famous across the galaxy for its order. Every citizen had a schedule, a task, and a place to be at all times. Deviating from the rules was considered almost impossible. The Zethurians wanted to see how humans would adapt to such a rigid world. The humans arrived on Ordara aboard their small ship. As they stepped onto the planet, they noticed the streets were perfectly clean, the buildings lined up in exact symmetry, and the citizens moved like clockwork. Even the air seemed to hum with precision. One human whispered to another, "Wow, they really love rules." The boy's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "I wonder what happens if we just explore a little." A nearby Ordaran citizen paused, tilted its head, and responded in the formal language. "It is the symbol of adherence. Do not touch or question it." The woman smiled politely. "We're just looking. We want to understand." The man picked up a fruit, inspected it, and then asked the vendor, "Could I try one that's slightly different?" The vendor froze. "Different? That is not allowed," it said. The boy, fascinated, grabbed a brightly colored toy that did not belong in the correct section and asked, "Can I play with this?" Citizens gasped. Humans were breaking the rules not out of disrespect, but out of curiosity and genuine interest. A Zethurian observer took notes. "They violate rules, yet they do not harm. They question structure without causing chaos. This is unusual," it said to a colleague. "They are teaching the Ordarans without intending to." They came across a public garden where the plants were arranged in perfect geometric patterns. The woman knelt beside a flower that was slightly out of alignment. "It's beautiful," she said softly. The man suggested, "What if we gently move this one over? It might inspire a new pattern." The boy laughed and carefully adjusted the plant. Nearby citizens whispered in confusion. The humans were showing creativity in a place where creativity was not supposed to exist. Later, the humans visited a government building. Every species had strict procedures when entering, and Ordara was no exception. Humans were expected to line up, present documents in a precise order, and remain silent until called. Instead, they asked questions, shared observations, and sometimes wandered to see the architecture. An Ordaran official noticed a human drawing a pattern on the floor with chalk. "Stop! That is against protocol," it demanded. The woman looked up and smiled. "We're just exploring how the lines flow. It's harmless, and it might even help." The official hesitated. Could something so simple really be harmless? The humans had a way of challenging rules gently, without causing fear or disruption. The Zethurians were fascinated. Humans did not seek to dominate or disobey. They simply explored, experimented, and adapted. This was unlike anything they had seen before. A Zethurian scholar whispered, "They are teaching us that rules are not absolute, they are tools, and sometimes tools can be improved." Humans, of course, did not follow these instructions exactly. The boy leaned over to the man and whispered, "Do we really have to sit there?" The man smiled. "Let's just observe first, then decide." They adjusted slightly but remained within the spirit of the rules, adding small touches of personality, a smile here, a question there. During dinner, the humans asked questions that no Ordaran would have dared. "Why is this dish served at exactly this time?" asked the woman. "What happens if it's earlier or later?" The officials blinked, unsure how to respond. Humans did not challenge authority aggressively, they simply sought understanding. Their curiosity opened discussions that had never happened before. Citizens at other tables began whispering to each other. Perhaps rules could be flexible after all. The next day, the humans were given a challenge by the Ordaran Council. A minor crisis had been simulated. A power system in one district was failing. Other species would follow exact emergency protocols. Humans, however, approached the problem differently. They inspected the area, asked questions, and tried solutions that were unconventional. The boy suggested redirecting energy from unused systems. The woman proposed combining tools in ways the manual did not allow. The man coordinated with local citizens, teaching them simple techniques to stabilize power temporarily. Within hours, the district was functioning again. The Ordarans were stunned. Humans had solved the problem in ways no protocol had considered. They did not follow rules, yet they succeeded. The Zethurians, observing, scribbled notes furiously. "Humans do not obey in the traditional sense, but their solutions are often more effective than strict adherence," one said. "They are learning and teaching simultaneously." "You can learn and adapt." The children asked countless questions, and the humans answered with patience and encouragement. By the end of the session, the students were thinking in ways they never had before. Some quietly began testing small changes in their routines, inspired by human behavior. The humans also explored recreational areas on Ordara. There, they introduced simple games that encouraged creativity rather than strict competition. Children and even adults joined in, laughing as humans suggested new rules mid-game. Humans taught them that flexibility could be enjoyable. Citizens who had never experienced such freedom felt a thrill they had never known. One Zethurian observer noted, "They are not just intelligent, they are catalysts, they awaken potential." In doing so, they demonstrated that understanding and collaboration could exist alongside rules without violating them. One day, the humans visited a school that focused entirely on mathematics and logic. The students were strict followers of formulas and procedures. Humans entered the classroom, and the boy immediately began experimenting with numbers in ways the students were not allowed to. He drew shapes, patterns, and sequences that made no official sense, yet revealed new relationships. The teacher tried to stop him, but could not deny the insight the boy's methods provided. The students started exploring creatively as well, learning that rules could be the beginning, not the limit of discovery. By the end of the humans' stay on Ordara, the planet had changed in small but significant ways. Citizens who had never questioned tradition began experimenting with minor improvements in their work, schedules, and daily routines. Children who had never laughed loudly in public were now doing so, inspired by humans' joy and playfulness. The Zethurians documented everything, realizing that humans had done more in a few days than any species had done in decades of rule-bound practice. As the humans prepared to leave Ordara, the boy looked back at the streets, now buzzing with subtle energy and curiosity. "I think they'll try some new things while we're gone," he said. The woman nodded. "We just showed them what's possible." "That's enough for now," the man smiled. "Sometimes the smallest changes can have the biggest impact." Humans did not seek control. They simply acted according to their nature, curious, playful, inventive. As the humans boarded their ship to leave Ordara, citizens gathered quietly. Some waved, some bowed, some smiled shyly. Humans waved back, laughing and joking as always. Their presence had been a spark, a reminder that rules were tools to guide life, not chains to restrict it. The planet would never be the same again. The Zethurians were left with a profound realization. Humans could not be categorized by obedience, chaos, or discipline. They did not simply break rules, they transcended them. They were unpredictable, yet effective. They were playful, yet intelligent. They were free, yet thoughtful. Humans existed in a space between structure and spontaneity that no other species had ever reached. Back on their ship, the humans looked out at the stars, discussing what they had seen on Ordara. "They're so precise," said the woman, "but they needed a little nudge to see beyond their rules." The boy laughed. "We did nudge them, and they loved it," the man added. "It's amazing what happens when you mix curiosity with kindness. Rules guide us, but they don't define us." In a universe filled with rules, procedures, and order, humans were a reminder that creativity and curiosity could bring life, change, and joy wherever they went. The Zithurians would continue to observe them, still unable to fully predict their actions. But one thing was clear: humans were unlike any other species. They did not simply live in the galaxy, they transformed it one question, one experiment, one laugh at a time. The humans' next assignment brought them back to the Zithurian Council, this time for the final evaluation. The council chamber was enormous, a dome of shimmering crystal with platforms floating above the floor for delegates of dozens of species. Every detail was carefully measured, every sound precisely controlled. Humans, as always, entered casually, laughing, joking, and asking questions. The boy ran slightly ahead, pointing at the floating platforms and whispering to the woman, "Do you think they let anyone touch those?" The woman smiled. "Better not, let's just look for now." They had watched the humans' journey carefully, from the chaotic first arrival, through the environmental tests, the teamwork puzzles, and their enlightening visit to Ordara. Yet even after all these observations, the humans remained impossible to categorize. Some delegates were frustrated, others were curious, all were amazed. The council leader, a tall Zithurian with skin like polished silver, addressed the humans in a voice that echoed through the chamber. "We have observed your species across multiple scenarios. You break rules, ignore procedures, and defy expectations. Yet your outcomes are extraordinary. Tell us, why do you behave this way?" One muttered, "They are reckless." Another whispered, "Or perhaps they are brilliant." The task was simple in explanation: propose a solution that benefits all parties. The twist was that the humans had to negotiate, plan, and create strategies without any fixed rules provided. Every other species had previously failed this test because they tried to apply rigid logic or strict protocols. Humans, however, approached it differently. The boy immediately pointed to a cluster of planets. "What if we ask each species what they actually want instead of assuming it?" The woman nodded. "Good idea. Let's try to understand first, then solve." The man added, "And we can suggest solutions that might not exist yet, something creative." Humans did not panic at the complexity. They saw it as an adventure. They began by reaching out to each represented species, asking simple, honest questions. "What do you need most?" the woman asked a reptilian delegate. "We need stability and trade," it answered cautiously. The humans listened carefully. "And what about culture?" the boy asked. "We want to protect traditions," replied the delegate. The humans recorded everything, noting patterns, conflicts, and opportunities. They were patient, curious, and inventive. Next, the humans proposed ideas. Instead of enforcing rules, they suggested new systems. Trade agreements based on cooperation rather than ownership, shared technology programs, cultural exchanges to improve understanding, and energy-sharing networks. Some species were skeptical at first. "How can this work without strict enforcement?" one asked. The man smiled. "Because we design it together. Everyone has a role and everyone benefits. Rules are not walls, they are tools we use to help, not control." Their approach was unconventional, unpredictable, and effective. Every previous species had failed this task because they tried to follow rigid patterns. Humans succeeded because they combined empathy, creativity, and adaptability. By the end of the simulation, the galaxy projected in the hologram was thriving. Conflicts had been minimized, trade was fair, and communication between civilizations had improved. The Zithurians could hardly believe it. A species that ignored rules, laughed in the face of protocol, and often seemed chaotic had solved the impossible. The council leader rose. "It is clear," it said, "that your species cannot be categorized according to our existing classifications. You do not follow rules in a predictable way, yet your actions are effective and constructive. You are unique." Delegates debated how to classify humans. Some proposed the category of adaptive innovators, while others suggested rule-defying strategists or creative unbound. Each title seemed too narrow. No single word could fully describe the human's nature. The humans watched quietly, smiling at the deliberations. They did not need labels to understand themselves. Finally, a young Zethurian scholar spoke up. Perhaps we are asking the wrong question. We focus on rules and categories, but humans do not operate in that framework. They create, adapt, and inspire. Their impact cannot be measured by obedience or structure alone. One that was not limited by rules, hierarchy, or strict logic. Humans combined creativity, empathy, curiosity, and resilience in ways no other species had demonstrated. Their unpredictability was not a flaw, it was a strength. The boy piped up, "So what category do we get?" His question was innocent, curious, and perfectly timed. The council chuckled. The humans laughed too. "We're the category you didn't know you needed," said the man. "The one you couldn't plan for." It was not just a title, it was a recognition of humans' uniqueness. They would be called adaptive innovators, beings who did not merely obey or disobey rules, but who redefined rules to improve outcomes for themselves and others. The humans were delighted but unsurprised. They had never sought recognition, they had simply acted according to their nature. Still, the title carried meaning. It was an acknowledgement from the most advanced council in the galaxy that humans were extraordinary, not because they followed rules, but because they could think beyond them. After the council session, the humans were given the opportunity to share their experiences with other species. They traveled across the chamber, speaking to delegates, sharing insights, and answering questions. Their presence was energizing. Other species began to understand that rules were not absolute. They were tools, guides, and starting points. Humans showed that curiosity, creativity, and collaboration could achieve outcomes far beyond what rigid rules could produce. The humans also made small changes to the chamber itself. They rearranged a few holographic displays to make them easier to understand. They suggested new ways for species to communicate, combining words, gestures, and light patterns. They did not disrupt the council. They improved it subtly, showing that even in the most ordered places, innovation was possible. By the end of their visit, humans had left a lasting impression. Delegates whispered about their methods, students took notes, and scholars debated the implications of human thinking. One Zethurian observer said, "Humans are not just a species, they are a phenomenon. They inspire change, understanding, and creativity wherever they go." "I hope we can visit again," he said. The woman nodded. "We will. There's always more to explore and learn." The man with the plant added, "And maybe next time we'll help them invent new rules together." They had simply acted, learned, and shared. Their impact was profound, not because they broke rules, but because they improved understanding, inspired creativity, and demonstrated that intelligence could take many forms. As the ship lifted off, the council chamber seemed quieter, more thoughtful. Delegates began to discuss new ideas, new collaborations, and new ways of thinking about rules. The humans had planted seeds of change, not forcefully but gently, with curiosity and care. The humans looked out at the stars as they left. "We did good here," said the woman. "Yes," said the man, "we helped them see new possibilities." The boy grinned. "And we had fun doing it." They laughed, sharing stories of the challenges and the people they had met. For humans, the adventure was never about recognition. It was about exploration, learning, and connection. The Zethurians had learned something profound. Intelligence was not measured by obedience or predictability alone. Sometimes it was measured by imagination, empathy, and the ability to inspire others. And so the humans traveled onward, leaving behind a galaxy that was beginning to see the world differently. They had not just passed a test. They had changed minds, opened hearts, and reminded everyone that rules could guide, but curiosity and creativity could transform. The council knew one truth above all: humans could not be confined. They could not be predicted. They could not be fully understood. And yet, their influence would ripple across the galaxy for generations, inspiring every species to explore, experiment, and grow in ways never imagined before. Humans had arrived not to follow rules, but to expand the meaning of intelligence itself. After leaving the Zethurian Council, the humans continued their journey through the galaxy. Their ship floated smoothly between stars, and the boy pressed his face against the window, pointing at clusters of planets, swirling nebulae, and sparkling asteroid belts. "I wonder who lives there," he said, "and what games they play. And maybe we can help a little too. Sometimes that's even better than learning." The humans stepped in immediately, not with authority, but with curiosity. The woman asked questions. How do you usually move between cities? The inhabitants explained their procedures, showing diagrams and rules. The humans observed quietly, then suggested small changes, adjusting the timing of energy pulses, redirecting currents, and redesigning certain connectors between the floating cities. They did not impose their ideas, they offered them as experiments. The inhabitants hesitated, then tried the suggestions. Within hours, traffic flowed smoothly, energy usage became efficient, and the cities no longer drifted into collisions. The inhabitants were amazed. How did you think of these things? They asked. The man smiled. We look at the problem from different sides. Sometimes rules help, sometimes you just need to try new ideas. The woman added, and you can always adjust if it doesn't work, that's part of the fun. The boy laughed, skipping across a small bridge. It's like a puzzle, I like puzzles. Everywhere they went, they saw problems that other species had accepted as unchangeable. Humans did not see limitations, they saw possibilities. A desert planet struggling with water distribution received new techniques from humans who observed patterns of sand and underground flows. A mountainous planet facing transportation difficulties received creative bridges and rope systems designed by the humans. In each case, humans asked questions, experimented, and taught locals to think in flexible, adaptable ways. The Zethurians continued to observe remotely. Delegates whispered to each other as reports came in. Humans are changing worlds, one said. Without force, without weapons, without rules. Another added, they are gentle yet transformative. Their intelligence is beyond anything we expected. The boy invented games using local materials, showing that fun could exist anywhere. The woman explained scientific principles in simple, creative ways. The man with the plant observed ecosystems carefully, suggesting small changes to improve balance and growth. They were explorers, teachers, and friends all at once. On one planet, a species was struggling with communication. Their language consisted of light signals, but the signals were often misinterpreted. Humans, as always, approached with curiosity. The boy experimented with patterns, the woman observed carefully, and the man suggested combining the lights with sounds for clarity. Within a short time, the species could communicate more accurately and efficiently. They cheered, thanking the humans, who simply shrugged and said, "We just tried some new ideas. You did all the work." Planets began to prepare small demonstrations, showing humans their challenges and hoping to learn from them. Humans were welcomed everywhere, not as rulers, but as collaborators. Eventually, the humans returned to the Zethurian Council. The delegates were eager to hear of their adventures. The humans shared stories, the floating cities, the desert engineering, the light-communicating species, and countless small discoveries. The council listened in awe. Humans had not just solved problems, they had inspired hope, creativity, and collaboration across countless worlds. One Zethurian asked, "But did you always follow rules?" The boy laughed. "Not always. Sometimes rules are helpful. Other times they're just the start of something better." The woman added, "We try to understand first, then we decide, that's how we learn." The man nodded. "And sometimes we just play, that's important too." They could take any situation, no matter how difficult, and find solutions that others could not imagine. They were adaptive innovators, but more than a title, they were a symbol of what intelligence could be. As humans prepared to leave the council chamber, the boy asked, "Where should we go next?" The woman smiled. "Anywhere the galaxy has mysteries," the man added, "and maybe somewhere we can help again." They laughed together, full of excitement, curiosity, and wonder. Back on their ship, traveling between stars, the humans looked at countless worlds below. Some glowed with cities, some shimmered with natural beauty, and some were quiet, untouched, waiting for life. "I love this part," the boy said. "We get to see everything," the woman laughed, "and sometimes we make a little difference while we're here." The man added, "And maybe that's the best part of all, helping and learning at the same time." On each, humans left subtle changes. A better system for water, a way to share ideas, or even just a new way of thinking. They did not impose themselves. They encouraged, guided, and explored. Everywhere they went, curiosity and creativity followed. On one quiet planet, the humans encountered a species that had never left their home world. The species had no rules for travel or trade. They had no experience with outsiders. Humans spent days learning about their culture, asking questions, and experimenting with ideas that were completely new to the inhabitants. Slowly, the species learned to trade, communicate, and solve problems they had once thought impossible. By the time the humans left, the species was thriving, inspired by methods they had never imagined. The humans did not seek fame. They laughed at the idea. "We're just exploring," said the woman. "We're just asking questions," added the man. The boy said, "and having fun." Every planet remembered them not for authority or power, but for inspiration, creativity, and kindness. Finally, the humans returned to their home planet. They looked at their world with fresh eyes. Stars stretched endlessly above them, and the possibilities seemed limitless. "We've seen so many things," said the woman, "and yet there's still so much more." The boy laughed. "I can't wait to explore again," the man with the plant smiled. "And we will, but first we share what we've learned. That's important too. You are unique in the galaxy, and your influence will be remembered for generations." The humans read the message and laughed. "Influence is fun," said the boy. "But I hope it's the kind that helps, not bosses people around," said the woman. The man nodded. "Exactly, that's what we do best." They documented new ways of problem solving, new approaches to cooperation, and even new games that could teach important skills. They understood that intelligence was not about strict rules. It was about creativity, kindness, and adaptability. As the years passed, the galaxy continued to change. Planets once struggling now thrived. Species began to adopt flexible approaches, experimenting with new solutions and inspiring each other. Everywhere humans had traveled, curiosity and creativity spread like ripples in a pond. Even the most rigid societies began to see the benefits of balance between rules and imagination. The humans continued to explore. They journeyed to planets where no species had ever set foot, studied phenomena that had puzzled scientists for centuries, and met civilizations that had been isolated for millennia. Everywhere they went, they left a spark of curiosity, an idea to improve, and a reminder that rules could guide, but freedom and creativity could transform. In their final reflection, the humans gathered on a quiet hill on their home planet, looking up at the galaxy. "We've seen so many worlds," said the woman, "and helped in small ways everywhere." The boy pointed at a distant nebula. "There's still so much to explore and so many mysteries to solve," the man with the plant smiled. "And we will. Curiosity never ends. Imagination never ends. Learning never ends. That's the greatest adventure of all." Every world they visited would remember them, not as conquerors, not as dictators, but as explorers who inspired hope, learning, and imagination. And as their ship lifted into the starry expanse once more, humans looked outward, dreaming of the next adventure, the next mystery, and the next chance to make a difference. In a galaxy of rules, structure, and order, humans had proven that freedom, creativity, and adaptability could achieve what no rigid system could. They were unique. They were inspiring. They were simply human. The Zethurians, observing from afar, whispered to each other, "We will never understand them fully," and perhaps that is exactly the point. They are a gift to the galaxy, a reminder that life is meant to explore, to imagine, and to grow.